Welcome to Hauntcore Vault. If you are ready for horror tales, you are in the right place. If you are new, please subscribe to the channel. I'd love to know where are you from and what time you are watching. Let's begin.
This is something I usually just say to my close family and friends. To get you in some context, I live in the capital of my state but used to have a great-grandfather in a little town around 3 hours away from my home. He died a couple of weeks before turning 101-year-old, but that last bit is irrelevant, just a fun fact. The point is that my family used to visit him at least once a month, my grandparents, uncle, and some aunts, along with most of my cousins and parents, 4 to 8 cars full of people, but we never stay there to sleep. At least that's what my family says. And is almost impossible to me to have an afternoon nap. Insomnia is common for me. This is important later in the story. I believe I was haunted by something, now I know are called guardians, entities sent to a person to be stalked by it. I have a vivid memory of my family staying over to sleep on my GGP house. They gave us some hammocks and some blankets. Yes, Mexican. And yes, it gets cold during the early morning before the sunrise. I tend to wake up around 2, 3 a.m. since I was 7 or 9 to have something to eat, 2 or 3 cookies, and we were in the living room. Near my hammocks was a small table with cookies that my mom prepared beforehand, knowing I would get hungry, and didn't want me to bother others in their sleep. In front of the table was the door that, while it usually remained open because it was a small, safe town and all the neighbors left their door wide open during night, but since we were there, they decided to close and lock it to make us feel comfortable. Next to it was a big window with iron bars. The window was basically a wall. It extended almost from the floor to the roof, and to column. I took a couple of cookies and ate them. Without looking up, I felt a chill in my body, something telling me by instinct that something bad was about to happen. The goosebumps didn't take long to invade all my body, and that's when I heard it. Tick, tick, tick. There was someone or something tapping the iron bars of the window trying to get my attention. I looked up and saw a pale head with black veins with no hairs. The place where the eyes were supposed to be were empty, just pure infinite darkness. And it was smiling. It wasn't filled with endless razor-sharp teeth or unnaturally bended fangs. It was just a smile. The type of smile that was unnaturally big, taking 3/4 of its face, and no tongue. Pure darkness beyond the row of teeth. I could see its body, just the long neck and the long pale hands that ended with black tips and nails, pointing at the door. I felt a compulsion to open the door and got nearer and nearer, step by step, felt my mind trapped screaming, but no sound from my mouth, while my body moved despite my unwillingness. I don't know what happened, but something snapped inside me, and somehow while my little hand was on the lock, I was able to regain my senses. I remember crying in silence and managing to get back to my hammock. The thing eventually left the window, not without reminding me it was still there with the endless taps on the iron bars. I don't remember how, when, or if I slept the remaining of the night, but the next memory is my family receiving the news that the neighbor died due to a heart attack in the middle of the night. He was found next to his door. There was no way for me to confirm this, since, like I said, while it was a vivid memory for me, as clear as the memories of my first kiss or the first time that I won a fight in elementary school, my family insists that such thing never happened because we always left before sunset. Ever since then, I had a phobia to see a window wide open in the middle of the night. I always kept my curtains closed after sunset, but every once in a while, I heard it, reminding me it was still waiting for me to open the door. Tick, tick, tick.
In my mind, I was haunted by a whole decade. At least I had memories of being haunted by this thing by a decade. But for some reason, I never told my parents. My dad's immediate reaction was telling me that whatever happened to me wasn't real, even when he had some experiences with his late brother, before I confessed everything. And my mom, she is too religious in that aspect, to the point of not watching horror movies, because she thinks is an invitation for those things to happen in your house. Anyway, I met my GF, soon-to-be fiancé, but don't tell her, through my best friend. Let's call him Fred, to keep his identity safe. 3 years ago, Fred invites us to his house to have some beers and dinner with his sister and brother-in-law, and another pair of friends in common. I have to admit, it was me who made them a couple. After dinner, we went to the living room, where there was a small window, just big enough to let some light in, and to see the house next door from the couch I was sitting. That house belongs to his family. Hell, almost the whole block belongs to his family. In my city, we tend to put concrete walls to separate houses, but the house next door was inside the same wall, surrounding the corner and splitting his property with the one of the neighbor of the other side. In that house, Fred's grandmother died. If you believe the stories his family tells, his grandmother was Passes, and in fact died soon after a failed exorcism in that house. Fred told us soon after I confessed to them I had a phobia to windows during the night, and instead of asking why, he told us to go to the front yard and told us about the story about his grandma, and how his parents, who ended up divorcing not long ago, were having more and more fights. He also told us about seeing a woman with long black hair and a white dress watching him from the kitchen when he arrived from school at night, 9:30 to 10 p.m. We were studying to become lawyer at the time. And once seeing her on the hallway after taking a shower in the middle of the day. He also heard someone banging his window in the middle of the night and seeing a handprint on the glass when he woke up. He doesn't have curtains. Then the other couple tell their own stories. Tony tells how he has a mirror in his room, always covered with a blue sheet, because he saw someone reflected on it that wasn't him, and when the mirror is not covered, there was always something out of place in his room. He lived with his parents at the time, but locked the room every time he left the house, the only key being his. And his girlfriend, Jessie, told us how she has an amulet made to her by a white witch, not a Karen, because she felt a presence in her house. Eventually, I tell my story, and my GF tells one about she speaking with a child during her neighbor's pregnancy. That girl is her now 7-year-old neighbor's daughter. Eventually, we all left, and everyone slept okay that night, mostly because none of us slept alone. It was a Saturday. But the next night, Sunday, was different. Jessie had a nightmare about a black smoke man talking her and aiming at her insecurities. Tony's mirror lost the blanket in the middle of the night. He couldn't find it until the next morning. He couldn't sleep. Even when he turned the mirror, he felt someone watching him. And he swears someone screamed inside his house, but no one woke up. Fred saw the women inside his room. She left after 10 minutes staring at him. My GF felt someone inside her room, like a predator stalking its prey. I felt something similar. At that time, I had distanced myself from religion, but when I tried to pray to God after many years, I felt someone choking me. The harder I tried, the harder the choke. I know all of those events because I called my friends in GF next day, asking them about feeling weird last night. After I called my friends and make sure it was all connected to the Saturday night, I came to the conclusion that whatever was haunting Fred's house decided to send something else, or at least a part of itself, to us. Unlike other horror stories where the houses are cold, Fred's house was hot. Unnaturally hot. My city is known to be hot and humid, but even on fresh days, Fred's house was hot. Like if the thing in there was expelling energy instead of absorbing it. We found later that someone had buried a dark magic artifact below the construction. That day, Tony and Jessie went with the White Witch, while my GF, Fred, and I, with Fred's mom and sister, went to a church. But not any church. In that church resides the only exorcist authorized by the Vatican, and every Monday he performs cleaning, healing masses. You know the words, he basically performs mass exorcism with his assistants. On my way there, I was afraid of going there. I was angry at my GF for driving to there, even when it was my idea to go there. And the closer I got, the stronger the strangling sensation felt. That's when I realized I wasn't afraid. The thing was afraid and was trying to manipulate me to avoid going there. And once again, just like in my memories of youth, something snapped inside. The strangling sensation was gone.
Instead, some kind of energy flowed from the place between my shoulder blades, and the thing that was holding me was now being held by me. I felt it in my right hand, trapped, struggling to leave, but I didn't let it. It felt like having fever, but only on one hand. Eventually, the Mass began, and the cameras, the priest streams his Masses until the healing aspect begins, and then he streams again after he is done, and slowly people begin to scream as soon as whatever they had feels attacked by the priest or his aides that are imposing hands. The priest looks me in the eyes, but it felt like if he was watching through me. He sent one of his assistants and she starts working with my GF. I stay there holding her hand with my left, and they end with her. Then Fred and his family. I am left to be the last. Not the last of the group, but the last person in general. The assistant works on me. She prays in tongues I can't understand. I feel my hand burning. Heavy. She tells me to lift my right hand. I can't, and then I manage to lift it just a few centimeters, but it's not enough. The priest gets near me. He trades places with his assistant. I feel the holy water on my head and arm. He speaks in tongues I can't understand. He tells me to lift my hand, and I manage to lift it around the height of my belly button. Still not enough. I look down, my eyes shut. He commands me to lift my arm. I finally do it. He looks me in the eye and says, "You still have something else, something old." He turns around. He sees my GF, the same look he gave to me the first time. He nods as he's giving her permission or recognizing something. He calls a man and goes to get a microphone. He stays by the altar. The women start speaking to me, but I can't hear her. The man speaks to my GF, but I can't hear them. I can only hear the priest saying to everyone, "Do you renounce to old pacts? Do you renounce to evil deeds? Do you renounce to biddings?" And everyone says, "I do." Then he says, "I destroy those pacts, those biddings, and those chains." By the holy blood of Christ, he asks the crowds, but looks at me. "Do you renounce to the guardian, to the entity that haunts you at night? Do you renounce to the old pacts?" I look down. I try to say I do. I can't. I feel like the child walking to the door once again. I hear my GF vomiting. I finally able to say I do. Believe it or not, since that day, I lost my phobia to windows at night. I no longer hear the ticks, and while many people would say bullshit, I know it was real.
If anyone is seeing this, then I don't have much time left. It's been getting more aggressive. I think it might try to attack me soon. If that is going to happen, I want someone to know what happened to me. I should probably tell you when it began. It first started while I was about 7 or 8 years old. I was going over to my grandmother's to go camping with my aunts, uncles, and cousins. The place we were camping at was an area behind her house. We called it the Blacktop. It was this old abandoned walking park. The reason it was abandoned was some people burned down one of the main houses that were in the Blacktop. Now all that's there is the concrete frame where the house once stood and the fireplace. After the fire, the entire park was abandoned. When entering into the Blacktop, you go through this path that leads you to it. As soon as you enter the park, the first thing you see is the house, the main place my cousins and I would hang out. If you turn to the left, there's a little path that leads to a few busted-up structures. We've explored most of the abandoned buildings at the Blacktop.
If you keep going on that path, it will loop around and lead you back to the blacktop. If you go right a little and straight, you'll reach a fork in the road. If you go left, it will loop around back to the blacktop. If you go right, it will take you down a pretty long path that leads to some smaller paths. We haven't explored the entirety of that path yet. If you're at blacktop again and you go right, you'll see an abandoned pool. The first time we went there, one of my cousins almost stepped in a kiddie pool full of algae, thinking it was grass. If you go past the pool and keep walking for a bit, you get to a pond. Around the pond is where we were camping. I arrived to the site pretty late, and they were already set up when I got there. All the tents were up, and there was a fire pit. When I got there, me and my cousins, Dalton, Tatham, and Tyler, all went out to do something. I don't remember what we did. My sister Chloe, who's the oldest out of us, was there too, but she didn't really hang out with any of us. After a little while, we came back to the site to chill there for a while. While we were sitting and talking about movies or the latest Minecraft update, we heard something. It sounded like multiple pairs of feet on the grass. Then a dog came out of the trees. It was a German shepherd with red collar on it. It ran over to us and looked to be excited to see us. It was jumping around, barking quite a bit. We all started petting it, and it calmed down a bit. I looked at the collar, and it had a name on it. Max. That must be his name. Then a man walked out of the woods where the dog had came from. My grandmother and everyone else came over and spoke to the man. "Hey, folks, how are you on this fine summer day?" he said with a large amount of joy in his voice. "We're doing great. How are you today?" My uncle, Gary, said to the man. "I'm doing quite all right myself. Me and some buddies are going dirt biking around here, and I was wondering if you could watch my dog while we're riding," the man asked. A lot of people would dirt bike around here, so him saying this wasn't a surprise. "Of course, the kids already like him, so we'd be happy to," Gary said, looking over to us. "Oh, that's great to hear. I'll be back tomorrow to pick him up," the man said, waving back as he walked away. That night wasn't very eventful. Gary took me and my cousins frog hunting to make fried frog legs. Tatham and Shoal chickened out and wouldn't eat any, but me, Tyler, and Dalton ate all of them. They kind of tasted like chicken tenders. We named one of the frogs Ralph because of the sound he made. I went to sleep around 10, while Dalton and Gary stayed up and sat around the fire. I woke up and got out of the tent. I believe it was about 7 a.m. I saw my grandmother making eggs over the fire. I sat down and Max came over to me. I pet him for a bit. I then realized that besides my grandmother, I was the only one awake. "I guess Dalton stayed up too late again," I jokingly remarked to her. "Well, you know him. When's the dirt bike guy coming to pick up Max?" I asked her. "No clue. Maybe sometime in the afternoon," she said. People started to wake up. First my dad, then Gary, then my aunt Crystal and Dreama, then Tatham and Tyler, then Shoal, and finally Dalton. It's about 9 a.m. now, and we're all eating breakfast when suddenly we heard someone running towards the camp. Max started jumping up and barking. We thought it must be Max's owner, but it wasn't. It was another dirt biker. He sounded very distressed. "You guys gotta help. My friend crashed into a tree. I don't think he's breathing," the man said in a panic. Dad and Gary went to help the biker, while me, Tyler, Tatham, and Dalton had to wonder what's going on. Not shortly after, the police were called. Max's owner crashed into a tree and his head collided with the tree, smashing his head. We could see the aftermath through the ambulance window. There was gray matter everywhere. They said he died instantly. Max went with the man's friend. After that event, nobody ever dirt-biked there again.
As we were watching the ambulance drive off, Dalton tapped me on the shoulder. "What?" "Look over there in the forest." He points into the trees. At first I didn't see it, but then I did. It looked tall and skinny, almost human-like, but it didn't look right. I couldn't see any other features except for its lanky limbs. It was dark and I couldn't see what color it was. It blended into the forest, which is why you couldn't see it if you weren't looking hard enough. "Maybe it's some weird tree or something," I tried to explain. "That doesn't look like any tree I've ever seen. It looks almost human-like." "Then what do you think it is?" I ask. "I don't know, but I don't think it's a tree," Dalton says. "I'm sure it's nothing," I say, trying to change the conversation. That night, something happened. On this night, everyone went to bed around 10 p.m. I was in my tent. I couldn't sleep for some reason. I just had a feeling that if I slept, something bad would happen. As I'm laying there, I hear something. It was the crunch of leaves on the grass. I thought that maybe someone had gotten up to get a drink or something, but if that was the case, why didn't I hear anyone's tent unzip? So I decided to check it out. I unzipped my tent, trying not to wake anyone up. The fire was out, so I couldn't see very much. I keep walking until I can see more. Then I see it. It was hunched over, looking at something on the ground. I could tell that it was something very tall, with lanky limbs and long fingers ending at a sharpened tip. Its head was almost a perfect circle. It almost had no features on it, no clothes, no joints, nothing. It looked like it was made out of wood. It resembled some kind of demonic stick figure. I go to back up, but I stepped on a leaf. In that moment, it was almost like all sounds stopped at once. There was nothing but silence. And then, it's as if every sound in the forest started all at once. As the figure turned around, I could see that it had two perfectly round circles for eyes, and they were glowing white. There were no other features on its face except for those eyes. As it turned around, its eyes started flashing. I could feel myself drifting into unconsciousness. All I could see were those eyes, and all I could hear were those loud noises. I couldn't help it, and soon I passed out. I woke in my tent. I looked around frantically, thinking it was still around, but it was day. Everyone was outside. Maybe it was a dream. But it was so real. I went outside and everyone was there. I didn't bother telling anyone. They'd think I was crazy, so I just kept it to myself. Later that day, we all went home. I went to my mom, and I forgot about it. Then that night, I had a dream. I was in a forest, an endless, dark forest. I turned around, and there it was, the figure, with its lanky limbs and glowing eyes. Then I started running. I couldn't stop. All I knew was I just had to get away. I looked behind me, and it was closer. I looked back again, and it was even closer. Every time I looked back, it was closer. Until I looked back for the final time, and I woke up. Once again, I questioned whether that was real or not, but then I saw it. It was looming over my bed. I couldn't move. I thought it was another dream, so I did what anyone would do. I pinched myself, and it hurt. This wasn't a dream. I couldn't scream. I was just sitting there. I was almost waiting for it to kill me, but it never did. I was just laying there, but then I just fell asleep. I woke and it was gone. And of course, I didn't tell anyone. They would think I was crazy.
It all started when me and my brother and father moved into a house. It was a 3-story house with 2 apartments on each floor. The house was over 100 years old but well renovated, and right across the street was my new school, and we were surrounded by a lovely park. All in all, an amazing place to grow up. I was 5, maybe 6 years old at the time. Back then, I noticed a lot of shadows in the corners of my eyes. This went on for 10 years without me realizing that it is, in fact, not a normal eye thing. When I was young, I was extremely afraid of the dark, and for some reason, I always thought Batman was going to stand there when I opened my eyes and kill me. Thinking back, Batman was a very tall black figure, which is going to be important later. I've always been extremely sensitive to the energies around me and the paranormal, so my guess is that I already sensed his presence but didn't know what it was yet. I was also dealing with depression and insomnia ever since I was very young due to bad family stuff, but that is also relevant. When I got older, about 12, my mental issues started to worsen drastically, and I started to cut myself and stuff like that. My insomnia was pretty bad, and after I was finished with high school at 15, my sleep cycle was fucked beyond repair, so I was usually awake at night and slept during the day, or often not at all. I was constantly sleep-deprived. Weird stuff started to happen. Objects would disappear and reappear after months. Stuff would randomly fall off shelves and harmless stuff like that, but I noticed it and it was odd. I started hearing voices yelling or whispering my name. It was the voices of my dad or brother most of the time, only to realize they weren't home or asleep. It got worse pretty fast. It was a long time ago, and I can't remember in what order things happened, but there were multiple auditory things going on. Gurgling like someone was being choked to death from the middle of our living room, strange music awakening me at night, coming from the corner of my room, to then get more silent and disappear again. Knocking on the walls, always 3 times. Horrible demonic screeches, footsteps, mainly coming from the attic, which was right above our apartment. Sometimes it sounded like someone was throwing around whole closets up there. Really loud rumbling in the middle of the night. By that time, I already knew my house was haunted, but I didn't know what it was yet. So me and my neighbor and friend, Natasha, which was my age, and we grew up together, she also had an older brother that was my brother's age, called Peter. Started to investigate. We realized that she and her brother had been bothered by the entity before I have, and they had a guest room that was mainly where it stayed at first. Ever since I lived there, I could not enter the room because the presence was so overwhelmingly evil, almost like the air was crushing you. That same feeling I got after it started and had it 24/7 for about a year. That feeling is if someone is standing right behind you holding a knife at your back. Very, very uneasy. I'm sure some of you know the feeling. So I tried to communicate with it and gave it lots of attention, thinking it was a ghost, which was my biggest mistake. Things got a lot worse very quickly, and it had completely attached to me because I was the perfect victim and a buffet of negative emotions, which I later learned was their main energy source to make them stronger. So that one night, I looked at the shadow in the corner of my eyes and saw a black silhouette of a cat jump off my bed and disappear midair, or rather, evaporating like smoke. I jumped around because I sensed someone standing behind me, and there it was in full form. It was what many people call shadow people, or hat man. I'm sure there are other terms, but I later learned that these shadowy figures are demons, and they can appear in various forms, often with glowing eyes or a hat. Mine was blank. No face, no hands or feet, not even a real head. But it was about 2 meters tall and filled up the room with dark smoky shadow and stared into my soul with its non-existent eyes for a moment. I froze in shock. but as fast as it appeared before me, it disappeared again. After that, things got really bad because I started to really research and knew what I was dealing with. I got obsessed. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. This was all I cared about. He started to play mind games after that point, which was probably the peak of his haunting. Due to my depression and suicidal tendencies, I welcomed darkness and wasn't scared of many things. After that night, I almost started to cry when the lights were out, or only half on. He knew that and used it against me, shattering a light bulb in our apartment every 2 days or so. We were pretty poor, so we wouldn't always get a new one immediately. And since I was awake at night, I had to deal with it. He was active during the day too, but when the clock hit 2 to 4 a.m., that's when they are most active. One time, I walked into the kitchen, and before I could turn on the lights, I stood on something weird. Turned on the lights to find the floor crawling with maggots. Every inch was covered in them. I was shocked, grossed out, and panicked, and tried to shovel them up and put them in the trash, basically crying through the whole thing. Somehow they were light flighty and disappeared into the walls after a few minutes. There weren't any cracks, which added to my confusion. One time, I talked to it all day, just speaking into the air, but I felt its presence, and hoped it would let me sleep late at night. I remember saying something like, "I gave you attention all day now and would appreciate it if you let me sleep now." The energy in the room suddenly got really aggressive, and I felt something choking me for a few minutes. That was the one and only physical attack I experienced. They generally don't want to physically harm us because it would be counterproductive. They will, however, do it if it helps their grand plan to break us. Basically, I was an exhausted wreck because I spent my nights literally fighting off a demon. I knew I needed help and registered in a paranormal forum. There was a guy who ended up helping me twice. He was magically talented and able to astral project and stuff like that. Back then, he strongly weakened the demon, and it actually stopped for a few years. Every now and then, little things would happen, but nothing that made me worry. He still followed me everywhere and had a strong negative impact on my emotions and overall well-being, so much that he drove me to try and commit suicide at the age of 16. There were other reasons that contributed to it, but I strongly believe that he was to blame for the most part. This whole experience was extremely traumatizing, like living in a horror movie. Besides my friends that lived in the house, no one believed me, my dad didn't take me serious, and my brother knew stuff was going on, but he was scared, so he decided to ignore it and leave me alone with it. There were so many more things that happened, but I can't possibly write them all down here. This post is already long enough. I saw some apparitions over the years or heard weird stuff, but overall, it left me alone. Not sure if he was waiting for the right time again or if he was too weak. After my suicide attempt, I went to a clinic and met my future best friend. We started to communicate with the demon or a Ouija board, but there wasn't much useful stuff he said. I learned that they just tell you what you want to hear, and that you can basically not believe a single word they say. I developed some kind of fucked up mental connection with him. Well, about 2 years ago, he became active again. I went to bed at night, and my BF was already lying there, put out all the lights, and closed my eyes. I opened them again and noticed there was light in the living room, and as I looked, the light was turned off again. He waited until I looked. These light plays was what he used to do years ago too, and while this might seem harmless, I knew this was it. It's starting again. I was so scared that my body shaking violently for hours, and my BF had to comfort me. I contacted my friend that helped me years ago and spent a couple months developing a plan to trap the demon in an object. My friend ended up going behind my back and do something far more risky, but it worked, and the demon is gone. For good. At least I think he is, because the connection is severed and I don't feel him anymore, but I will know in a few years.
A demon attached itself to me once. Many did, actually. It was from an ex who was obsessed with paranormal stuff, like an unhealthy obsession. It affected me for months. Nightmares, sleep paralysis, scratches on my arms, weird behavior, like wanting to laugh at things that were meant to be sad or serious. The feeling of being constantly watched. All the typical stuff. Warning, this talks about exorcism type stuff. Trigger warning for anyone who has gone through this. On Christmas Eve, my family was doing prayer, and I didn't even want to pray. I suddenly felt very scared, like I had to run for my life. I got sick to my stomach, and my stepmom said I looked pale as a ghost and I looked sick. She asked if I was okay, and I said no. I started sweating profusely and shaking. I got super nauseous and super scared. My heart was racing and I got lightheaded. My stepfather, a preacher, put his hand on my head and started praying. He could tell something was wrong. Then all of a sudden, it was like I could see everything normally, but I couldn't talk or control my body. I could just hear and see everything happening. I made sounds I never thought I could physically make, spoke a language that I never heard of in my life. I was laughing and screeching for absolutely no reason. I remember even spitting on him and watching my arms swing around in front of me. I ended up blacking out after that. When it was all over, I saw it, and it was so ugly, but also it looked like it wanted pity. Just like, how to describe, super black. So black it was like looking into a void. Its eyes were huge and glowing red like two red flashlights. And it had two spikes on its head, almost like Batman's helmet. Nothing else, no defining features. Just small and in the fetal position, like it was feeling sorry for itself. I low-key almost got PTSD from that event. I felt like I got hit by the plague the next day. My whole body ached and I was super sore, like I had done an intense full-body workout. I really wish I could figure out some scientific explanation to what I experienced, but I have no idea. Never happened again, ever. That was years ago, and now I have the power of God and anime on my side.
My childhood home, I believe, was haunted, either by a demon or a pretty aggressive spirit. Background on the home. It was built in 1917, was the preacher's parsonage for the community church. Multiple preachers lived there. There were weddings and funerals in the house. My grandparents bought the house in the 1960s, and my father bought it from them in the 1980s. My parents still own the house, though myself and my older two siblings are all moved out. Background in the family. My family is primarily Christian, fairly normal. The most notable things worth mentioning are my father was mildly abusive during my childhood. He was an alcoholic after succumbing to stress of owning his own business. Thankfully, he's been sober for 18 years now. Never physically abusive, but verbally, which extended into mental abuse. And my older sister has suffered from mild anxiety and depression while in the home. Some of the first events my older sister and I experienced were when my oldest sister went to Italy with her Latin class in high school. The house has 3 bedrooms. It's an odd layout. The third bedroom is accessed by walking through the second bedroom, while the first bedroom is separate from those. My older sister and I shared the second bedroom, and regularly, while our oldest sister was in Italy, the door to the third bedroom would swing open, not slowly, but as if someone had pulled open the door. Shortly after, we would see a shadowed figure standing in the doorway, never moving until we would start screaming for our parents. This happened multiple times while our oldest sister was in Italy. Throughout the years, a lot of small things happened. objects disappearing and reappearing up to multiple years later. A specific instance would be the first Swiss Army knife I got just disappeared, and years later I found it underneath of my bed on the ledge of the molding against the wall. I've had my hair pulled on, watched doorknobs turn and the door be pushed open, heard my mother or father call my name when no one was home. One of the weirdest instances was my uncle and his son were visiting, and his son was running all over the home and came specifically from the third bedroom, crying, saying a man with a beak scared him. Now, by itself, this is not too odd. Children misinterpret what they see, and my older sister had some puppets and other oddball things in that room, so we passed it off. Several years later, my niece and my nephew, who at this point had never met my uncle's son, as they lived multiple hours away, came from the third bedroom, not scared, but saying they had both spoke with a man with a beak. This was all around the time my sister and I got our first cell phones, and she had taken a picture of the stairs, and there was a shadow figure with a beak and cane walking up the stairs. As my sister got older, she began to have more things happen to her. She would regularly hear knocking on the walls and closet of her bedroom. She got the third bedroom after our oldest sister moved out, and she regularly had extreme nightmares. It was a common occurrence to wake up to her screaming in her sleep, and it was often a sleep paralysis dream of multiple hags standing over her talking about killing her. She had a cat that stayed in her bedroom that often would start screaming, and we would find it belly all the way on the floor staring at the ceiling. My sister had told our mother and myself about these occurrences and dreams, but not my father, because he always said she was making it up or crazy when she would mention anything as a kid. Then one night, a few years ago, while we both still lived there, my father woke up screaming. Now, my father has been known to sleep talk, but he's never in his life woke up screaming from a nightmare. We asked him what it was, and he said he couldn't move, and multiple old women were standing over him, talking about killing him. The same nightmare my sister had many times. The only other notable events were my first sleep paralysis dreams. They happened one day after the other. I was working third shift at the time and was sleeping in the morning. Both of the dreams were my older sister, possessed, walking out of her room towards me and grabbing me. Both times she wasn't home. And the room we used as an office in the downstairs portion of the home constantly had a heavy feeling about it. It always felt like something was in there. It was very uncomfortable, and I know that is the room where the casket was for funerals when it was a parsonage.